In this week's web video fishing forecast for New England, we've got a bunch of ice fishing reports for you, rod building info if you're looking to wrap a new stick this winter, a reminder about the striped bass circle hook seminar that we hosted here at the Fisherman magazine last week, word on a couple of deals up in Massachusetts. First off, we got word on a proposal to modify the commercial striped bass regulations this year, and secondly, we got open comment period for recreational black sea bass regulations in 2021. Also got an update from the ASMFC annual winter meeting taking place this week, specifically talking about striped bass, and we've got much more for you, so check it out.
The fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
Hey there, Toby Lapinski for the New England edition of the Fisherman magazine with this week's web video fishing forecast for New England. Well, you know, it was kind of a tough week we had here since I last checked in with you weather-wise. We had a bad cold front, we had a big nor'easter. I'm down here at the beach walking around just giving a look, see how the conditions are now, picking up some sea glass. I found some bunker washed up in the parking lot where I am. I actually saw a bunch of bunker on the beach yesterday. This is in Long Island Sound, Connecticut. There's still bunker swimming around out here, and it's the first week of February. It's kind of crazy, but you know, that nor'easter, we got where I am here on the shoreline, I don't know, 6-8 inches of snow, but of course, then on top of that, Mother Nature dropped a couple bucketfuls of water in the form of rain, you know, just to make shoveling that much more exciting yesterday. Inland, some places got upwards of 1.5 feet, so you know, it made things kind of difficult this week for fishing reports. But with that said, I gotta remind you, last Thursday night, we hosted a live seminar by Jim Hutchinson Jr., our New Jersey, Delaware Bay editor here at the Fisherman magazine. It was a live seminar. He was talking about circle hooks and striped bass, how we got here, what you can expect, how to use them, all that kind of stuff. Well, it's now posted at YouTube as well, of course, over at thefisherman.com. You can check it out right now. If you have any questions regarding this subject, circle hooks and striped bass, whatever, feel free to drop them in the comments down below here, of course, over on Jim's video as well, as we're monitoring for any comments. There's been a lot of questions that have popped up, of course, in regards to circle hooks and striped bass. And I gotta let you know, stay tuned to the end of this video, because the ASMFC, that's the managing body that manages striped bass among a bunch of other species on the Atlantic coast, they had a meeting this week. And I've got an update for you on what came specifically of the striped bass talks this week. And I'm gonna have it at the end of the video, so be sure to stick it out right to the end. Again, as I noted a minute ago, with this winter weather, unfortunately, cod boats couldn't really get out. I don't think any of them, locally anyway, got out since I was with you last week. I know one or two of the boats out on Long Island were able to sneak out, I think, on Sunday in some frigid weather, but hey, more power to them. They gave it a shot. That said, everything I got this week is on ice fishing. Unfortunately, just info before the storm, as this snow that's sitting on the ice is going to insulate it. If it was thin before, it's probably melted off by now. If it was sketchy, it's even sketchier, so be extra careful if you head out this weekend. But that said, again, before the storm hit, got some info in. We're gonna start off with a video check-in from my buddy Dave Bocaz, as he hit, as you will see, several local lakes in Massachusetts and Connecticut over the weekend.
Thank you, Toby. Coming at you from Bigelow Pond. It's Saturday, 14 degrees on the ride out here. Got in on the afternoon bite. Came out with my buddy and his kids and wife, and couple flags, couple small pickerel. I got some perch jigging. Nothing to write home about, but we're sitting on 6 to 7 inches of ice. Good, safe ice. But check this out. Coming at you from Nashawanek Pond, East Hampton, Mass. I forgot to mention in the last video I was Connecticut. Made the trip out here today. I'm shocked to see that there's 8 to 10 inches of ice out here. I can see somebody's snowmobile track. I was surprised to see that. But slow bite today, perch, a couple of flags, but no fish. That was in the afternoon again. Got out here at about 1 p.m. Figure get in on the sunset bite, sunsetting right about now. And maybe just the wrong pressure. Maybe with the changing pressure, tomorrow is supposed to be a storm, maybe on the side of the front. So as a matter of fact, well, actually, here I am, fishing the storm. Ventured out to a place called Forest Lake. That's Palmer, Massachusetts. We got 7 inches of ice out here, and it's a little slow again, but let's face it, Lapinski. The report was never about fish. It was about the thickness of the ice. Yeah, that's it. So we got 7 inches of good, safe, hard black ice out here. I had 3 flags in the first, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes I was out here. Lost something big. It was hung up on the spool. When I freed it, it started ripping out line, and man, I just missed the hook set on it, but it felt good. You know, I'm thinking it was a big rainbow, but so that's what we have going on around southern Massachusetts. A little bit of Connecticut in the report. Enough thick ice to alleviate the pressure on some of the more popular spots so far this year, but still, you know, there's a little inconsistencies. This guy was telling me that there's only 5 inches over there, so I'm steering clear of that. And I like to remind everybody, spud as you go. Don't forget your ice picks, a float suit if you have it. Stay safe out there, you guys. Tight lines and flags up. Back to you, Toby.
Thanks a lot, Dave. You seriously put in some good effort there. Had a good time. I was going to get out this weekend, but, you know, my buddy John Hanasek, Rhode Island field editor, was out, got in touch with me, and I just could not peel my butt off the couch on Sunday. So more power to all you guys that went out. And speaking of guys that got out this weekend, got an update from James Jukes. He's been checking in every week, letting us know how the ice fish has been going. Well, he got out locally this week. He fished with his buddies Clayton and Jeff. They hit a lake in central Massachusetts out west of Worcester. They were targeting pike. That was the target intended species on the day. Unfortunately, sounds like the pike didn't want to cooperate, but nonetheless, they had some great action, especially on both white as well as yellow perch, jigging and tip-ups. They also had an interesting catch in this lake, a nice brown trout on one of the tip-ups, which is interesting because, as James said, this lake is not stocked by the state. It does, however, connect to another lake by way of a very small stream. That other lake is, in fact, stocked, so nice little journey for that fish. Cool catch, and again, you just never know what you're going to catch on a given day out, whether it's saltwater, freshwater, ice, whatever the case may be. All right, moving on. Next up, Long Island editor Matt Broderick has got some rod building videos that he's going to put in little tips and tricks every week throughout this winter season. I'm going to clip over to them for you. And of course, starting off this week, he talks specifically about putting decorative trim bands on your guides. Check it out.
We'll be demonstrating here how to put trim bands on your guide wraps. There would be the little, in this case, silver thread in front of the actual guide wrap. It's really straightforward. You need the same tools. It's just one extra step as opposed to wrapping a regular guide. So just watch along and I'm going to talk you guys through it. So first thing we're going to do is take our guide here. Same step as wrapping a guide. Make sure your rod is straight with the reel seat lining up with the guide. Take our guide. Tape it on the blank. All right, that's all done. So a little different from wrapping a regular guide. The first step we're going to do here, instead of going with the black thread, is we're going to go with the silver thread. So here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to find where we want that band to start. Okay, so I want this wrap to be 1.25 inches. Okay, so I have an idea of where it's going to be. Keep that ruler in handy. Take a little piece of tape like that. Now we're going to take our silver thread first. Tape to the back side. Okay. Now we're going to spin it down the blank. I think we're coming up on that 1.25 inch mark. Okay. And that's 1.25 inch right there from the bend of the foot. Okay. So we're going to spin the same way we put like black thread on for regular guide wrap. Go over it, and we're going to do a 3 band here. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's 3 wraps over the point where we go over the original thread. We'll take off our tape, unwrap this, keep it nice and tight with your other hand just so nothing comes undone. Okay, and we have this little excess right here. What I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to trim that off. Okay, so we have our band in place. Now we're just going to wrap this way, go back on top of itself so it locks it in 1, 2 times. So now that's locked in, that trim band. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take another piece of tape, a little bigger, just like that, and we're going to tape over that silver thread. The tape, come on the bottom, snip, spin, and that's in place. All right, so our trim band's in place. Next step is pretty straightforward. Take another piece of tape. Going to take our black thread now. Again, tape to the back side of the guide. We're going to spin. Now this is where we lock in that silver thread. Go over the silver. Right about there we want to cross. We're going to go, keep going, keep going. Make sure it goes over that silver band, back over the black band. 1, 2, 3 times. Okay, so that's locked in. We're going to undo our black thread. Undo our silver thread. Now, here's what I like to do to make sure that the silver thread doesn't peek through on the actual guide wrap. What I'll do is, if you see right here, let me see if I can get it up for you guys. This silver still peeks through on the black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my silver thread, pull it a little bit, push it together, pull it until it disappears. We're almost there. And there we go. So now it's just pure silver, nothing peeking through. Nice and clean wrap. Make sure everything's nice and tight. One more wrap, we'll go around, make sure everything's nice and looks good. All right, so now everything's perfect. Now at this point, we're going to trim away our silver, or spin, and we're going to trim away our black thread. And at this point, it's really straightforward. You just want to keep wrapping like a regular guide. Again, go slow up the foot. Make sure transitions nice and smoothly. At this point, we can unwrap our guide with the tape. Proceed. Little mistake, back off. If you do make a mistake and you want to back off, just make sure you unspool back onto your thread spool. And at this point, we're going to want to put in our ending thread, which will be this one right here. Double it in half, put it on the back side. And we're going to wrap about 1/8 of an inch. All right, that's about good. Pinch it down, snip. Black thread goes through this loop. tighten it up. Take a little razor blade, as close as we can get. And that's it. There you go, guys. Make sure everything is nice and tight. And there you have it. That's how you put a trim band on a guide.
Thanks a lot, Matt. If you are new to wrapping rods, we're gonna have some good tips for you going forward from Matt this winter. If you're experienced, it never hurts to, you know, up your game, what have you. And I even put a little bit of a article together for the February issue, which is due out right now, basically talking about emergency rod repairs. You know, what happens in the fishing season when you break a guide, you break a tip, what have you. Sure, you can bring it down to your local tackle shop. Nothing wrong with that, but there's times when you just want to get back out there fishing as soon as possible. So I gave a very simplified, quick fix to get you right back in the game in the February issue of the Fisherman magazine, which of course you can read right now at thefisherman.com. And click directly over to the story with that link that popped up in the upper right hand corner of your screen. I got some more rod building projects planned myself this winter. Maybe I'll touch upon those. And of course, like I said, we're going to have some tips and tricks every week from Matt out on Long Island. And to finish things off, we got a bunch of regulatory related issues to pass along. Two specifically from Massachusetts, and the final is that ASMFC update. So first up, in Massachusetts, just got word that there's a proposal by the Marine Fisheries Advisory Commission up in Mass to modify the commercial rod and reel striped bass season for 2021. As you may know, the last couple of years they haven't been able to fill the quota. They've done some in-season adjustments, still attempting it, and they did not get there. So in order to sort of preempt this problem, the proposal was made to increase the number of legal fishing days per week, which currently sits at 2 for commercial anglers, to 4, with the option to increase it to 5 later in the season if it doesn't look like the quota is being filled. They're also looking to open the season a little bit earlier. So going over to thefisherman.com right now, I got the complete details, exactly what was proposed, some of my thoughts on the subject, as well as, of course, how and where you can submit your comments on this subject. And then also in Massachusetts, Division of Marine Fisheries is seeking public comment on this year's black sea bass season. While the ASMFC approves status quo regs as far as bag limits and size limits across the Atlantic coast this season for sea bass, they did allow for a little bit of wiggle room in order to adjust the season openers. So that's just what they're doing in Massachusetts. Again, head on over to thefisherman.com, complete details as well as contact information to provide your comments. And then, of course, as I noted, as everybody is waiting to hear, gonna finish off this week with the annual winter meeting of the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, and specifically the Atlantic Striped Bass Board meeting, which took place Wednesday afternoon. Now, I, of course, sat in on the meeting. I've got a video update for you right now, so be sure to check it out. We'll see what is coming down the pike officially here for us in regards to striped bass in 2021. Well, I just finished sitting through some, I don't know, what time is it here? 5 hours of web-based meeting with the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, specifically the Striped Bass Management Board. Actually, both Jim Hutchinson and I were sitting in on this meeting, attending, and as far as I could tell from the meeting attendee list, we were the only media, fishing related or otherwise, to be in attendance on this meeting. So, as you would expect from the Fisherman magazine, this is a Fisherman magazine exclusive breaking news item for you. So we announced last week, earlier this week in an e-newsletter, that the Striped Bass Board was going to be discussing several topics this week. They met at 1:45 Wednesday afternoon. The first hour or so, they addressed a handful of other agenda items, but it was somewhere around that 3:15 range where they really touched upon or began discussing what we were most interested in at this point in time. And that is circle hooks, bait, and striped bass. And it was the discussion began by addressing the proposal, which was presented by the states of Massachusetts and Maine, for the tube and worm jig. That's right, tube and worm jig, not something I'm terribly familiar with in my striped bass fishing, but that's how it was referred to by the board member. Anyway, they got onto the subject discussing the viability of circle hooks on the tube and worm rig with a sandworm attached. Eventually, being that the motion was, or the proposal was brought about by Massachusetts and Maine, the state sitting in between them, New Hampshire, was questioned onto how their thoughts were on it, being that they were going to be sandwiched potentially in between these regulations, and they expressed extreme opposition to the proposal for, among other reasons, because the New Hampshire representative has a gear item in mind that could be commercially sold to produce the circle hooks on the tube and worm rigs, but I guess that's a subject for another day. Eventually, the discussion continued. No other gear types were addressed with the proposal. That means the bucktail jig, the eel skin rig, rigged eels, stuff like that was not addressed in this proposal. Eventually, motion was made to accept the proposal, which also added in a study to be initiated by a committee to be formed shortly, which would, over a 2-year span, study the circle hook or J-hook deep hooking concept on the tube and worm. And in this 2-year span, anglers would be allowed to use the tube and worm rig without a circle hook, which means a standard tube and worm rig, J-hook, sandworm deal was being proposed, and eventually it passed. The only 2 states that were in opposition of this proposal was New Hampshire, as we noted earlier, and the state of New York. So the motion passed. So officially this weekend, as of this week, for the next 2 years anyway, you do not need a circle hook on a tube and worm rig when you attach some sort of natural bait to the end of it. This further led to a subsequent motion or modification of the motion to develop, let me read the words here, a definition of bait that would require the use of circle hooks by March of 2021, intended to lead to, by definition, the exemption of certain scenarios from the circle hook requirement and clarify those scenarios which would require a circle hook. Subsequently, it was modified, it passed unanimously. It was subsequently modified to include the wording of as soon as possible in the event that they're able to get it done sooner or if it takes them a little bit longer. And additionally, the motion was amended to include incidental catches, such as, let's just say, for example, if you're targeting bluefish, fluke, sea bass, what have you, and you happen to catch a striped bass, but you're using a J-hook. So hopefully some clarification will come of that. Are you allowed to keep the fish under that scenario? Do you have to release it? Is it illegal to harvest the fish at that time? So hopefully coming out of this, we're going to have some sort of clarification again to that as well. Sort of all leads back to the earlier issue, the oversight by the board back in the fall. But nonetheless, we have at least one answer for you here going forward officially. Tube and worm rigs, their minimum for the next 2 years, do not require a circle hook when you attach bait to them. Of course, as this story develops and additional hearings and motions and proposals, etc., are become known, we're going to pass that information along to you. But until then, be sure to stay tuned to the Fisherman magazine and thefisherman.com.
Steigercraft boats, built by people who fish our waters. Serious anglers choose Steigercraft for their 40 years of boat building experience right here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Visit steigercraft.com for a dealer near you.